You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Oh, Chris, okay.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the RTM to order. The RTM will be convened on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 at 8 p.m. at Fire Headquarters 43 North Main Street to consider and act upon the following matters. Will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1, roll call.
Is this on?
Yeah. Green light.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. Representative Alphone?
Here.
Representative Amore?
Here.
Representative Anderson?
Here.
Representative Barron? Absent. Representative Black? Absent. Representative Bonenberger?
Here.
Representative Brooks?
Present.
Representative Conklin?
Here.
Representative Everson?
Here.
Representative Erlanger?
Here.
Representative Flanagan?
Here.
Representative Greenberg?
Here.
She's here.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Healy?
Here.
Representative Henschel? Absent? Oh, Zoom? Okay, thank you. Representative Hines?
Here.
Representative Ingraham?
Here.
Representative Kelly? Absent. Representative Leach is present. Representative Maresca?
Here.
Representative Preet? Absent. Representative Riccio? Absent. Representative Shrestha? Absent. Representative Sires? Representative Sullivan?
Here.
Representative Stepanik, sorry.
Wasn't prepared.
I know. Thank you.
He's here
Rep-
from the house.
From- Oh, okay. Wow. Representative Torelli is, Representative Torelli's not on Zoom, correct? Okay, absent. Representative Toohill?
Here.
Representative Verderam?
Here.
Okay. Representative Witkowski? Absent. And Representative Wells?
Here.
Present. Okay, ex officios, I have First Selectman Cosgrove and Clerk Arpin, and that's it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, item number 2, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of December 14th. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Representative Ingraham. Is there a second?
Second.
Representative Toohill.
Toohill, thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of December 14th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Extensions?
I'm going to abstain. I was absent.
What was that?
She was absent.
Oh.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, one abstention. Minutes are approved without exception. Moving on to item 3, receptions of communications, reports of committees, and citizens' petitions. I have a letter here from Evan Bruning, Assistant Town Planner, regarding P&Z number 22-5-2, 2-lot subdivisions and coastal site plan at 125 Thimble Island Road. Dear Mr. Flanagan, I'm writing on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Commission. On July 7th, 2022, the commission voted to approve a two-lot subdivision at 125 Thimble Island Road. This property is owned by Matthew and Stephanie Milano. As part of the subdivision approval process, the Milanos offered the following land dedication and conservation easement to meet the open space requirement for the subdivision regulations. An 8,421 square foot portion of the land directly adjacent to the property owned by the town of Branford, West Point Field Park, to be deemed an open space. There is also a 21,761 square foot conservation easement spanning across both of the newly created parcels. These are depicted on the drawing of number 1 and number 2. Furthermore, section 3-2 states that when a subdivision abuts an existing open space area, the commission may require the lot lines of such land to form a continuation of the existing open space to provide a single and unified area. The open space land is adjacent to the town of Branford property on West Point Road, West Point Field Park, and can therefore be merged with this property. RTM action. The RTM would now have to accept the donation of the open space land and the conservation easement to allow subdivision to be finalized. And this has also been approved by the Board of Selectmen already. I will send this to Administrative Services Committee. And you should have a copy of that. It came with the
Okay.
agenda. And you have that, and anything else? No?
No, nothing else. Yeah.
That's all I have. Okay.
Point of something. Thank you.
What?
So you're gonna send it to admin,
Yes.
you know the date for that?
When they're gonna meet, I'm not sure,
February
So you're
7th.
staying in February?
what was that?
Yeah, it's February 7th.
7th.
10th?
7th.
February 7th.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 4, to consider and approve review town warden ordinance, Charter 16, Article 11 of the Town Code. Representative Anderson?
Through you, Mr. Moderator. We are in continuous conversation with regards to these, so I would put in a motion to re-refer.
Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion on the referring this item? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item is re-referred. Item number 5, to consider and appropriate adopt a policy for virtual meetings into the town meeting rules. Representative Anderson?
Again, we are in constant conversation with these topics, with rules and ordinances. We have yet to meet to make a decision, so I'd like to ask to re-refer.
The motion is to refer.
Second.
Second by Representative Brooks. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item is re-referred. Moving on to item 6, to consider and if appropriate approve a nonpartisan resolution regarding Tweed Airport expansion. Do I hear a motion?
I put a motion on the floor that we accept
The
resolution.
resolution? Is that correct? And was there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And for simplicity, I will read, which I read last month, but I'll read it just for now, so everybody that was not here, what the proposed resolution is. Be it resolved by the representative town meeting of Branford that 1, Branford wishes to register its disapproval of the increased volume of air traffic merging from Tweed Airport because it is outsized impact on our community in the direct flight pattern, notably those of Short Beach, Double Beach, Branford Point, Linden, Pawson, Indian Neck, and many others. Item 2, the RTM strongly urges an environmental impact study that measures real-time on-the-ground data collection rather than theoretically modeling of the impact is essentially before proceeding with any plans for the airport expansion. Item number 3, Branford should participate in the decision that impacts Branford. We seek a voice on the New Haven Tweed Airport Authority Board when decisions affecting flyover impact our town are taken. Okay, there's a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I would like to move to amend the language of the resolution.
Okay, you would like to amend that? Go right ahead.
So both as a representative of the 3rd District and as a citizen of Branford, I'm suggesting the following amended resolution. The amended resolution is built from that drafted by Sandra Reiners, essentially recognizing that there are many concerns, vocal concerns among many of my neighbors around the environmental, ecological, and health impacts of the Tweed's expansion. It calls for a more rigorous examination of potential environmental problems. It also highlights that we ought to do what we can now, today as citizens, to gain a seat at the table where decisions are being made. And the language which is being circulated is, be it resolved by the representative town meeting of Branford that the RTM strongly urges the Federal Aviation Administration to conduct a full environmental impact study that measures real-time, on-the-ground data collected rather than theoretical modeling of impact before any final approval is given with regard to the proposed airport expansion. Branford should be able to directly participate in decisions that impact Branford and its 28,000 residents. We seek a voice on the New Haven Tweed Airport Authority Board. And Branford registers its concerns about the increased volume of air traffic emerging from Tweed New Haven Airport because of its impact on the human and natural environment on its direct flight path, notably those of Short Beach, Double Beach, Branford Point, Linden, Boston, Indian Neck, among others. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Representative Sullivan, if there's a second. Any discussion from members of the RTM?
Mr. Moderator.
Representative Brooks?
Do I need that? So the original resolution I had my concerns with, but it raises a lot of good points. And I would stand that this amended resolution gives Branford an opportunity to have a say in the discussion, look at it fully, but it's not saying that we're against it, but that we want more discussion and we want to be involved. And I see no reasons why we wouldn't support that. So I rise in support of this amendment to the resolution.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to the amendment?
Over here.
Representative Sullivan?
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also rise in support of the amended resolution that deals with a thorough environmental evaluation of the proposed expansion at Tweed and calls attention to and asks for Branford to have representation on the Tweed Airport Authority. After walking my neighborhood and speaking with folks where I live in the 6th District, north of I-95 and along Brushy Plain Road, it is apparent that we have noticed a significant increase in large airplanes flying low over our homes. Our neighborhood is not even very close to Tweed. I can only imagine what my colleagues in the 3rd District or 4th District are seeing and hearing in terms of increased plane traffic. I'm sure the residents in those areas of town are also noticing the increase and have concerns about the increased future impacts of any approved expansion at Tweed. These concerns, however, are only one part of the language in the resolution we have in front of us tonight. A second key component of the resolution is asking for the more thorough environmental impact statement to be used to evaluate the environmental risks that the proposed expansion would have for our town and the surrounding community. This would require the use of real-world data collections and expanded research and review of on-the-ground impacts and expanded scope of review of the surrounding area. And in fact, I did some research and looking at FAA guidance document, Order 1050-1F, Environment Impacts Policies and Procedures, under 3-1.3, actions normally requiring an environmental impact statement, there are examples of actions that normally require an environmental impact statement, and in that list is item C, major runway extensions. So in fact, this resolution is only asking something that the FAA should be doing by their own policies anyway. Further in their own guidance documents, in 4-1 of environmental impact categories that may be relevant to FAA actions include reviewing air quality, coastal resources, socioeconomic, environmental justice, and children's environmental health and safety risks, and water resources, including wetlands and floodplains. I would believe that Branford would also find these relevant topics would be important for a more thorough environmental evaluation of the impacts of this proposed project. The final part of this resolution deals with Branford having a seat at the table. Somehow our community is not represented on the Tweed Authority Board. However, the towns of Madison, West Haven, Hamden, and Guilford all have seats. I would claim that Branford is primed to see more negative impacts of any Tweed expansion than many of those communities. So this resolution is pushing for Branford to have representation and a voice on that board. I would hope that we as a body can support the main ideas of the resolution in front of us. Proactive protection of our residents and natural resources by thorough environmental review, calling attention to the concerns of our constituents about increased flight traffic and low-flying planes, and getting Branford to have a voice in this decision-making process. All of these components are for the betterment of our community, and I ask that my colleagues vote in support of adopting the amended resolution. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak? Representative Toohill?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm a little unclear as to what's before us at this moment. Is it the two texts that we just heard, or is it the text that was just passed out to us? You know,
This is an amendment to the initial resolution that was submitted to us by Sandra Reiners.
okay,
We haven't voted on amending it.
We haven't voted on the amendment.
okay. Thank you.
This is arguments to vote to amend. We would have another vote to,
Right.
unless everybody rescinds everything.
The motion on the floor is an amendment to the... Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this?
Yes.
Representative Everson?
Yes. Thank you. I'm going to stay seated. It's awkward to stand with a microphone so far away, if you'll indulge me with that. We could debate for hours the pros and cons of the proposed expansion of Tweed Airport, extending the runways and building a new terminal as the airport's adopted master plan calls for, but that's not why we are here. We are here because a resident and former elected member of this body requested that we pass what she hoped would be a nonpartisan resolution. I would argue that the proposed draft offered by Representative Bonenberger honors that intention. This amended version removed the word disapproves for a reason. We know that there are those who are in favor of it and believe there will be economic benefits to come. Others enjoy the convenience of hopping on a plane nearby to reach a vacation destination. This airport, we should remember, is less than 5 miles from this building where we are tonight, and 3 miles from Branford's border with East Haven along the Farm River. As elected representatives of the 28,000 people in Branford, this amended resolution simply asks that Branford have a seat at the table when matters directly impacting our town and our residents, as important as this could be, are being discussed. I see no harm in that. There is also no harm in asking for a full environmental review. Out of an abundance of caution, it seems a reasonable request. I think it's our duty as elected representatives to advocate for this resolution. The goal is to make sure our families, friends, and neighbors are protected, especially those who live beneath the flight paths. We also need to protect our precious coastline. I'll be in voting in favor of the amended resolution. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Anderson, you had your hand up?
I have a question about what happens if this gets approved? What's the impact? It's just a piece of paper that...
It's really, to my knowledge, it's really a non-binding type of resolution that passed. I mean, it's just, it can be submitted, but I don't know.
Okay.
Representative?
I don't,
Oh, Maureen?
I'll speak. This is on.
Yes.
I don't actually know what happens with resolutions.
Okay.
But what I would want to say is that if we passed it in its sincere intent, that the leadership of the town would take it seriously. If we took it seriously, then leadership would, and perhaps take the spirit of the resolution to the authority and see if we could find a way to have a representation. Resolutions are, I think, a statement of intent,
Concern.
of worry, of concern, and I think they're valid ones. I will say I was going to say earlier, I the thing I'm most stunned about is that the data that is allowed to be used in furthering the initial environmental impact study is allowed to use modeled or projected data when we have opportunities to use real data, and I'll speak to that. When I was a kid, I had 6 aunts and uncles who lived all around the airport, and I used to love to go and have the planes go off overhead. You know, like many kids in this area, we'd go drive to the airport on a Sunday, have an ice cream cone, and watch the planes take off. I'm pretty old. There were some biplanes in there too. But now I live in Branford Hills. I live in the 4th. And I wasn't really thinking so much in the beginning. You know, Tweed expansion was kind of there, and I thought, oh, that's a pretty good thing, right? We could have that, and I was thinking a little bit about economics. And then as I started to learn about what the potentials are, I decided and agreed to have a sensor put on my house. Not because I was against Tweed, but I wanted more information, more real data. And I hear the planes every day now, and I have the Times, right? Because I'm right there. I'm at the very western end of Branford. And while it's not too bad, I know if it's that loud at my house, the people in East Haven, next to the airport, it's intolerable, okay? So I think the most reasonable thing in the world would be to ask for, in a very proactive way, let's use real data. And let's have a seat, because Branford is definitely going to be impacted one way or another. So I would definitely support this resolution. It is not out of the box a negative. It is, let us be represented in this decision. Thank you.
Representative Ingraham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm kind of remiss on, that this much writing had gone on, that information was passed so people could have speeches tonight and be informed on what was being presented. This was presented to us just now. It was not passed out to the whole RTM, wasn't passed through caucuses or through the leaders. This was just told to us tonight to make a change from what was originally proposed. I did get some indications from former Representative Reiners that pieces might be taken out of the resolution, but not it'd be wholly rewritten. So asking people to look at something that they analyzed for a month and then give it a few minutes to look at is one issue. Then the direction of resolutions that come out of the RTM are a piece of paper that gets passed around to whoever wants to use it for whatever purposes they want to use it for. It's not binding. It's not binding to this RTM. This RTM has no say in anything that goes on at Tweed. There are no purview over it. We all have as representatives, so we could go to meetings and help out with the conversations and push the conversations in either way that we'd like to have it happen. Looking to push our current administration. Our current administration has been part of this. We do have a person from Branford that is on the Tweed board from Short Beach. I know that I think he represents the Scrog on there, but he does live at Turtle Bay. He's a friend, so anyone that's nodding no does not realize, but yes, David White is Turtle Bay, and he lives in Branford. So there is a representative from Branford on that board. Interesting. I was against the main resolution, and I'm against having these resolutions like this come that we have no teeth in to vote on. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this?
I want to
Representative Lang, please.
Yeah. So I think I have to just give a little background because I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea about who I am. I consider myself to be an environmentalist. I drive an electric car. I use the wonderful composting ability that we have in Branford down at our own transfer station, and I compost every single piece of garbage in my house that is compostable. I pick up litter on the beach, so yada yada. I do all of these things, and I'm a true believer in protecting the environment and not creating any more CO2 emissions than we have to. In fact, I'd be in favor of closing I-95 if we could vote on that tonight. So, since we can't do that, I was initially against this resolution for two main reasons. The first one is I want to apologize to my constituents in District 7 because I don't have a sense of where they're at. And so I have not had the ability to talk to them or find out, and this is not about how they feel about the airport, or it's mainly the resolution, like how does that sit with everyone. The other thing I was hoping, because I was hoping to see the results of the year-long environmental study that has already been completed and is to be released on February 1st. All of that being said, my Democratic colleagues have done a very good job of convincing me that, yeah, what is the harm of getting more information and more data? So I'm very conflicted about this, but I just wanted everyone to understand why. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak? Representative Branford.
Yeah, I'd just like to address some of the concerns raised. Firstly, we're all adults here, we're all literate, we're all people who have, a fair bit of education, and, we could have highlighted the changes, the edits that we made to the much longer document, but what it boils down to is we took a stronger worded oppositional piece that was coming from a pretty partisan perspective, and we made a good faith effort to make it nonpartisan and strip that out. And to secure, for an RTM, a representative town meeting, which, if you go back to the origins of this, before Robert's Rule of Order, before all of, the sophistication, it was just people who lived in the town could come in here and talk. I believe it was held in one of the churches. And so here we are, and, what is this? Yeah, it's our opportunity before, the state has already basically blessed off on it. Once Tweed gets expanded, once it gets expanded, it's going to get expanded again, almost certainly. And the people that you're going to need to talk to aren't your state representative or your state senator, because they're not going to have a dang thing to say about it. And it's not going to be the city of New Haven either. It's all going to be the FAA and maybe the DOD, because the military will probably park some helicopters and planes there too. If it's a regional airport, that's what they do. So now you're not talking about making changes at the local level, at the town level. You're not talking about making changes at the state level. You're talking about needing to engage Senate and Congress. And for anybody who's written letters, I'm sure most of the folks in this room have, I certainly have. I did it about Afghanistan, and I do it, about Ukraine as well. The federal government, even if you're friends with senators and Congress people, they're tough to move the needle on that dial. So here we are, the expansion hasn't been made yet, but I want to emphasize to everybody here, this was drafted in the spirit of bipartisanship, citizenship at this town, and empowering small, limited, local government. And I personally, because of that last thing, really thought, most of the Republicans would be open to it, frankly. And I'm a little disappointed to hear this, presented as something that was like disingenuous. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Anyone else? Representative Ingraham.
Brother, we're not supposed to direct anything to each other, so I'll keep my comment about being illiterate myself.
All right, anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to this? Please get up and give me your name and address. You can come up to the front here and speak.
I'm just so confused.
Okay.
It doesn't do anything.
Hi, my name is Wanda Bobrisky. I live in the 3rd District in Short Beach. You want me to speak into the mic, or
So
can
it's for TV, not for me.
Oh, okay. I have a couple of visuals.
So,
It's just,
where-
this is the master plan, just for your information.
Ma'am, your name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said Wanda Bobrisky. Address is 6 Rockland Park, Short Beach, Branford, Connecticut. Is that on? Yeah, okay. I also, I am, and some of my colleagues are with Save Our Shoreline, and I have our brochure flyer, which is take one or not, but help yourselves. There you go, thank you. Save our shoreline. We are citizens of Branford for the most part. We formed over the summer because we learned of the activities for the expansion, proposed expansion back in the spring. And we've been doing a lot of research because I think that asthma is not bipartisan or partisan. Lead poisoning knows no political boundaries either. And I think that you should, what we have realized is the lack of information that is out there. That the Tweed Authority, and we've been going to the monthly meetings, and just so you know, the public is relegated to the last section of the meeting, and you sort of talk to a blank wall because there's no back and forth whatsoever. So there's no real exchange of information. So we have been digging deeper into all sorts of facts, and we have within, there's a website called Parents and Citizens of Greater New Haven .org, and on that shows the radii around an airport. Now this is not just Tweed, this is any airport within 1 mile. Obviously you can't read all this and you can look it up online, but I will, I think maybe you folks would like to see this as well. But the one that's really, really important is the 4 mile. Within 4 miles, what can happen, and that's Branford, to the edge of Branford. So we have on our team, we have lawyers, we have environmentalists, we have PhD, MD doctors who have done research about the health impacts. And so I appreciate the RTM members who spoke specifically to the medical and health issues that are raised by this, by an airport. And because we're committed to educating the public and sharing our information, we have held community conversations, and we did one in Stony Creek. I don't know if that's 2 or 7, but there were a lot of people there, and district rather, very upset by what they heard and very involved. And in fact, Sandra Reiners attended that and got on the ball from what she learned. So we're doing another one tomorrow night, and I will leave these at the door. You're welcome to take one. And we will be speaking specifically to the economics, to the health, and to also the master plan and what that entails. And that is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at Blackstone Library. Wonderful, beautiful auditorium. We love the library. So you're more than welcome. And we're going to have refreshments, even wine. So please come, you know. Better than those refreshments. So to speak to and there are other colleagues here who will also be happy to say a word or two on behalf of this resolution. But specifically to the environmental impact statement, you should know that Save the Sound started it off with a long letter that was published. It was actually also written up in the New Haven Register. That was April 21st. Then the Branford Conservation and Environment Commission, and is Heather here? Heather will speak to that. Then there is the Civic Association of Short Beach, wrote a letter as well. These letters are addressed to the director, the regional, New England regional director of the FAA, based in outside of Boston. Then we got one from Senator Christine Cohen, at the time environmental chair, and now she is transportation chair of the Connecticut Senate. Then another one from Representative Robin Comey, also calling for an environmental impact statement. Then we have one from the Friends of Farm River Estuary, which is, as you know, Farm River is the boundary between Branford and East Haven. Very concerned as well. Then we got one, to somewhat of a surprise, even Martin Looney, the Senate President pro tempore, and Alphonse Palillo, State Representative of East Haven, or New Haven rather, East Haven, New Haven, also wrote one. So I just want you to know that and none of them said expansion yes, expansion no, but they all agree that we need more information. And the environmental assessment, is that what you were referring to, Donna? I'm sorry, Representative Leish. So you know that it's going to be published on February 1st?
I was told yesterday, so.
Okay. So we are all waiting with bated breath. You should know that the environmental assessment, that particular study was conducted by a team that was hired by the airport, a consulting team. So when you hire someone to do something for you, you don't give them full carte blanche. You sort of tell them, well, let's look at this and this and this. It's very circumscribed. And what the environmental impact statement and all these represent, certainly Chris Sullivan can speak to this because that's your bailiwick, that the environmental impact statement is objective and involves other organizations and agencies and not a private consulting firm. So, Save Our Shoreline conducted a petition, and a couple of people back there, Maggie Ryan, personally knocked on doors, as did Maureen Venner, knocked on doors, but we also did it online. We collected 1,600 signatures, the majority of which are here in Branford, from all over Branford, not just Short Beach. And in the wording, it was very simple wording. It was just, we, the undersigned, urge the Federal Aviation Administration, in accordance with the National Environmental Impact Protection Act, NEPA, to undertake an environmental impact statement, EIS, that will thoroughly review the environmental and public health impacts of the massive expansion of Tweed New Haven Airport now underway. Furthermore, and this is a really big furthermore, the public must be involved in establishing the scope of the IES study, and local, regional, state, and federal representatives must all be engaged in the full EIS review process. And that element is not being addressed by this environmental assessment. So with that, and I just want to, 6th District is hearing, I got an email just at 4 a.m. yesterday from a gentleman on Totoket Road, and he simply says, I am a resident of Thimble Farms in Pine Orchard area of Branford. The frequency, noise, and increased number of low-flying flights are more than a nuisance. I am concerned about airplane emissions and the impact it is having on our wildlife along our valued shoreline. And he will be there tomorrow night. He wants to learn more. So this is not just Short Beach. This is not just Pawson Park. It is the whole shoreline. And what is extraordinary, and if you do read the flyer, and if you do, even better, attend tomorrow night, you will learn a lot more, is that there is significant, that there is significant pollution and emissions that we do not even, have not even measured. And that it's kind of the equivalent of where we were, say, 60 years ago with emissions out of cars. And it took Ralph Nader and a whole lot of policy making to get us to understand that cars need catalytic converters, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we are with aviation right now. And it's climate change, folks. This is not something that we're making up. You can look at any newspaper, look at any TV, look at anything anywhere, and climate change is front and center. And it's front and center in our federal concerns as well. And you say, okay, well, but it's convenient. It is convenient. But what is going to impact Branford is that when this 6 to 8 gate terminal gets built, and it's going to be right on the border with Branford, that 142 right through Short Beach from Coles all the way to Hemingway Avenue, and Hemingway Avenue, as you know, is 4 feet underwater, just the last big storm 2 weeks ago, that it's all wetlands, it's all flooding, and it's going to be tremendously impacted in traffic. And Branford, I guarantee you, Branford will be transformed if this thing gets built, and even if it doesn't get built, let's at least get the data to make sure that we're making informed decisions, not just blanket decisions. And that's really what what your colleagues on this side are trying to convey is that just get the information. And if it proves that, it's all, boop, not a big deal and it's not going to have an impact on your grandchildren, on your property values, on your ability to, get to Kohl's or get to New Haven, great. But let's get the facts. And that's what this environmental impact statement will do. It's really, saying no to it just means, well, what are you afraid of? Is it you just don't want to know? And I think that behooves your constituents in all of your districts, all of our districts, and our whole town. And to the fact that Branford, Mr. White, I'm not sure that he's still on the board. I think he may have circulated off, but I will. But that I did not realize he lived in Turtle Bay. So thank you for that. But I do believe that having attended these Tweed Authority Board meetings, Branford is not interacting with the public is very limited, and taking into consideration the surrounding townships is virtually non-existent. So I will be happy to turn it over to a couple of comments from my colleagues. I think just Heather, since I mentioned it, she's on a town commission, and they were one of the first in the town to write a letter back in, I believe it was the beginning of June. I'm happy to answer questions, but I think that we have other people to hear from, and honestly, the best thing that all of us can do is just get educated. And please come tomorrow night to the, I'm sorry, the petition that I mentioned. We have 1,600 signatures, so that's a lot of people. And if any of the people behind me will speak to it, they can say when they knocked on doors, people say, oh, it's not so bad now, or yeah, that is kind of a nuisance. But we are looking at a flight every 12 minutes. We are looking at up to 1 million enplanements. We are looking at, I honestly don't know, the economic data is, we have different economic data to share with you. I don't, that's not what's on the table right now. It's about the environmental impact statement. So I thank you for your time. I will defer to my colleagues. I'll leave these here, so take up your time with that right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You come up and identify yourself with your name and address, please.
No shit.
My name is Margaret Wheeler. I live on 111 Clark Avenue in Branford. I've been involved with studying Tweed since the 1990s. As a matter of fact, I joined East Haven in a referendum for 3,700 signatures, which made a promise, a 20-year commitment, that they would not extend the runway then. As you know, if you know what happened, so 20 years of peace and quiet that we enjoyed in our area has changed recently when Tweed, during COVID, went to the state and got the resolution illegally, legally. It was signed by the state as a called a memorandum of understanding. So this new change that's happening, if you study the master plan, it's 251 pages. I think that a lot of what I understand, I've seen by talking to a lot of people. And just to let you know, I have a master's in environmental science and a teacher, high school and college for 38 years, just retired. So I have time, a lot of people don't have time to really look at what's going on. And if you look at the master plan, this is phase 1, is to extend the runway and all this, but then there's phase 2, phase 3, going up into 2035, 7,000 foot runway, really, taking land acquisitions, etc. They really want to make Tweed another LaGuardia, which is 7,000 feet. Anyway, just to let you know, that's the long-term plan. Short-term, we're dealing with an extension of a runway. The problem with Tweed, I've been on the phone all over the country with different airports. Westchester County had airport issues. Santa Monica, pollution emissions, particulate matter, ozone. These are all very high right now in the area. It's extremely high. Ozone non-attainment area. High rates of asthma are definitely East Haven, right there in the census block along. And I worked on the census data with the DEP. Right there along the airport, the asthma rates are 3 times higher than than most areas. We're dealing with emissions, you know, if you look at the goal, well, they want a longer runway. Why? So they can get more flights to more areas farther away. People are enjoying what they're doing now, except that even, you know, and I understand that. And the thing about it is if you look at the complaint site, it was very difficult to get the people to complain about low-flying planes. There's a noise ordinance in New Haven. The violations right now that Tweed has to the community is outrageous. And right now, you're lucky you have a group of people, grassroots people in the area who are trying to rein them in so that it doesn't get as out of control, so that we don't have flights after 10 or flights before, 7 in the morning. This is all because people are trying to keep the peace and quiet enjoyment of our property around the area under control. So right now, there isn't a trusting relationship with the Tweed Authority. We really do need to make sure that these violations, what they're doing, is being watched more carefully, and that our community is affected. I wake up to what sounds like a hurricane when a jet takes off in Short Beach, like a hurricane force wind. That's what it sounds like. Decibel readings over 90 decibels. It's not supposed to be over 65. But that's the models that are going on. Now, for the people here who don't understand what's going on right now, the environmental assessment that's being done by the airport, is coming out. We have a 45-day comment period. I invite any of you to study the science in that document. There's going to be no way that you're going to have the time or the energy to sit down and look at every single piece of data, cross-examine it, make sure it's valid, find out all the laws involved with it. It's going to be impossible. We are working very hard to do that for you. What we're asking for you to do is if we can get the environmental impact statement, which we did back in late 90s. We actually worked hard in East Haven and Morris Cove area to get that environmental impact statement passed so that we can take time and make sure. Now, here's the most important thing we need too. Air monitoring spaces. Westchester has air monitoring sites all around the airport. Some of our local engineers put air monitoring stations up around people's homes. Hazardous levels of VOCs, particulate matter, and noise has been documented and is there right now as grassroots people watching this. So what we're asking is we want Branford representation, and we want you, if you can, write letters, endorse it as a group, as our selectmen, please write a letter asking for an environmental impact statement, so we have the extended time to study the data that they have and ask for more thorough data if we see needed in the environmental assessment. 45-day comment period isn't much. And from what I understand, the public comments, anybody who writes like, I'd like to know more about this, and that, no guarantee it's going to be published or even answered. So we need more time. We need air monitoring stations around the airport. Ask Sean Scanlon for that. He said, sure, okay, Westchester has it, Bradley has it, Tweed does not. Monitoring, they already did violations of their, this is really serious, the violations they have of their pollutants coming off the runway into the Morris Creek, into our water that we swim in and our ocean beds. PFAS are not banned yet. Those are the, in case there's a fire, it'll go right into our swimming areas. Think of the kids at Lighthouse Point and around the corner in Short Beach. And all our oyster beds. This is a very serious situation, and we know that they did violate their pollution already, the DEP, it's fact. So, there's a lot of people working really hard for you all. I hope you appreciate that, at least, and understand that we're not against the airport. It's been there. The problem is that if we allow this expansion to be extreme and not monitored, and we don't start now saying we really want to know what's going on and we really want to make sure that everything is monitored well, if we don't say it now, we have no say. So please, don't think of this as we're against the airport. Think of this as that we're for public health and environmental health. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public? From the public? No? Members of the RTM, Representative Erlanger? You want to come up?
Point of order, we're still discussing changing the whole thing, right? We're not even discussing the
Airport or any of
Have we jumped ahead here?
All right, your name and address?
Yes, thank you. Maureen Venner, 61 Little Bay Lane.
Maureen, sorry, would you
Venner.
mind spelling your last name for me?
Yes, V as in Victor, E-N-E-R.
Thank you.
It's nice to be in this room, and I thank you all for your public service. I admire you and appreciate you tremendously. What we all have in common, no matter what district you're in this city, in this town, is that we all love Branford. We care about each other's well-being, our own, of course, our families, our friends, our safety, and our quality of life. It doesn't cost us anything to approve, or for you to approve, this amendment. I ask you, please, as a resident of Short Beach, and I could give you all of the negatives that are happening already with Avello, but what will happen? People who live on Route 42 in Short Beach live 6 feet from the road. Again, thank you for listening, thank you for being here, and please vote up this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Engel?
Doesn't do anything.
But it does not do anything.
May not be on. Try the one next.
Okay, good.
Because they're very
So
passionate.
a lot of these enthusiastic and very well-informed folks are from the district that I represent, the 3rd District of Branford, and I believe that without taking formal measurements, we're probably the closest to Tweed New Haven Airport, our district. I don't have a prepared statement for tonight, but I do want to say that one of the things that I think is represented in this amendment, whether you look at the language that Sandra Reiners wrote, or the slight changes that are presented to you tonight, we are representatives of this town. And although there may be many people who are in favor of the airport and the expansion of the airport, and those who are concerned about the expansion of the airport, we as representatives of this town really have the obligation to look out for everybody in this town. And that means that if we need a full environmental assessment that's authorized by and conducted through the Federal Aviation Administration, then I believe very strongly that we need to support it. And what we do in this resolution, Tricia, Representative Anderson asked, what does this really mean? It's a piece of paper, but it allows us and allows the people of our town to know that we support and that the safety and concerns of our citizens. And by agreeing on this, to pass this resolution, we show our support, not just because we are representatives sitting around here, but because we're a representative of the people of our community. So I am voting in favor of this amendment, and I hope that my colleagues, all of my colleagues, will do the same. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak on this? Anyone else from the public? Come forward.
Hello, I'm Heather Wells Sweeney. I live at 38 Palmer Road in Branford, and my statement's been made already, but I want to speak it to myself for the record that yes, the Branford Conservation and Environment Commission did submit a letter to the FAA encouraging them to undertake an environmental impact statement. One of the reasons we cited is that the impacts of the airport may stretch farther than the study area for the environmental assessment, this current study that's happening now. And so we are encouraging a larger study for 6 points that I'll go through quickly. 1 and 2 together are the impacts on wetlands. That Tweed has stated this, that 22.74 acres of inland wetland may be impacted directly. Number 3, that there will be an increase in stormwater runoff because of the increase in impervious surface that does not allow the water to seep into the ground, that currently the airport sits in a flood zone management area to absorb runoff. When that is removed and then compounded by increased impervious surface, the stormwater amount will increase, and that could increase flooding in the neighborhoods. It will be an impact to local and migratory wildlife, perhaps increasing bird strikes. Number 5, there will be an increase in impacts on water quality. One of the largest impacts currently in general to water is stormwater, because it carries into the water anything that's on the land. And the last point is that there will be an increase in carbon dioxide, which is one of the major contributors to greenhouse gases causing global warming. Again, we did send the letter asking for an environmental impact statement to be conducted. Thank you.
Heather, excuse me, would you mind spelling your last name for me?
Sure, no worries. It's WELLS-SWEENEY.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the RTM or public?
Mr. Moderator?
Yep, it's up. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator, since we have the first selectman here, and he is a member of SCROG, I wonder if he would share with us how he has been involved and what his position is on the proposed expansion at Tweed.
Selectman Cosmo?
Oh, so you could just answer my questions.
To be clear, as you know, the owner of the airport is the City of New Haven. It's overseen by the New Haven Airport Authority, which the New Haven Airport Authority is a political subdivision created by the state of Connecticut. There's 15 members on that committee. I believe it's 8 from New Haven, 5 from East Haven, and 2 appointed by our Council of Governments. Those who are not aware, as you know, we do not have county government here in the state of Connecticut, but the state is divided up in different councils of government. So it's essentially a number of towns around the greater New Haven region. Primarily deal with transportation funding, but have in recent years expanded into some other shared services studies. And we have 2 members. So as when stated before that other communities have representation, no, it's representation from east, it's, appointments made by New Haven, East Haven, and 2 by the COG. A certain number of them have to live within the city of New Haven, I believe, per the statute. And as representative, so those representatives, there's not seats at the table or on the authority from those neighboring towns, and Branford is left out. So I just want to clarify that statement. I could feel like it was a little bit misleading. And that really speaks to, I believe, one of the points of the resolution. In terms of the COG, we did appoint 2 members, and I think it was during my time as chairman of the COG where we did put on Mr. White, who was a Branford resident at the time. Other than that, I believe the New Haven Airport Authority entered into a long-term lease, which is essentially management of this, the airport is now, I believe they assigned it to the private company Avports for, I believe it was over 40 years. I believe it was a 43-year lease. So they're the ones who are overseeing this expansion request. I also want to clarify, because it continues to be stated, and I've met with some members of groups and individuals who have come in to see me who have speak of their concerns of the airport, not only the environmental concerns, but just even the noise, the quality of life. And as stated, I think we all hear it all throughout town. I mean, I hear it over my house. I'm in this, as Representative Sullivan said, the 6th district. We are impacted by that. So I understand the impact, but I also look at what our role is and what authority do we have in this say. The other point I think with the bullet point was to, it sounds as if, rather than the environmental assessment. Now, I'm going based on what I believe, and from heard, and even from, I think, Commissioner of the Deep, Katie Dykes, has recently stated, as recently in December, when asked this question. This is the State Department of Environmental and Energy, or Energy and Environmental Protection, right? Let it go. This is part of the process. It is not a environmental assessment in lieu of an environmental impact statement. This is the first part of the process, and I believe it was stated. Then a draft is submitted, and from that there is a public comment period, and there's also a period where the public can state, and it is reviewed by the FAA. I believe it was stated earlier, including one of the triggers for a full EIS is significant runway expansion. So that is part of their own process, but we haven't, from my understanding, from those involved and also the state agency statement, that we haven't got to that statement, that part yet. So I think to say, that what is before you, that you're voting to no to an EIS, that's, again, I think, mischaracterization of what's before you. I think we have to let it, that's part of the process, and we haven't got to that yet, from what, my understanding of the process. So I just wanted to address that. When talking to residents and groups, that, again, as I stated, yes, personally, I see the planes. I hear them coming over. I understand it. But I also know, in terms of that, there is a process, and I'm not saying that, these individuals and these groups should continue to be involved in that process. But I just want to be clear for the record, it's not, you're saying no to an environmental assessment. I think from things that were stated, not only from what the group has brought forward, but also, what has been stated in terms of the FAA requirement, who oversees this. I mean, this is a federal agency that oversees it. When the Army Reserve Base came to the town of Branford, federal government doesn't come and ask for the permission. They come in and they have a process that they define. So to say, I'm just being, this is the reality. We do not have, there's not a local approval process. There's not a vote that's going to come before a town body for this process. There is a defined process that they follow, not only with this airport, but with every airport across the country. And I think we're not going to change that, as much as we, may be in favor of the airport or not in favor of it. So I think that needs to be clear, because it sounds from just sitting back and hearing the debate, it's like either you're voting for the EA or you're voting to say, no, we don't want an EA. And that's not the reality.
No.
I know, but that's been stated.
No.
It's been, okay, well, then maybe it was misunderstood, but so I think that needs to be clarified. It is part of the process, as I said.
But through you, Mr. Moderator, if I could just do a follow-up. Can you tell the residents of Branford, as the elected person who runs this town, how you personally feel about the proposed expansion of Tweed? Are you concerned that it's going to impact our town?
Well, I trust the process in terms of ensuring that the environmental impact is addressed or at minimum mitigated. You asking me personally? As my role as first selectman, I do not have a say. So let's be clear about that. I know you're trying to put me on a spot, in terms of, but the reality is you don't have a say. I also try in my life not to be a hypocrite. So I have flown out of Tweed. I probably will be in the future. So I don't want to sit here and then tell somebody that I'm going to fight, this should never happen, we shouldn't take place, and then, go on a flight. So that's the reality. I think certainly, as with any project, the environmental impact is looked at. We should consider it. As I said, on a local level, we do that. On a state level, they do have a process. And on the federal level, as stated by the DEEP, there is a very thorough process that they follow. Second, when you say about the impact to the town, well then, as I know it was touched upon, and I know that's not before you, there's also, I think, and somebody said, we represent all the people of Branford. Well, I can tell you that I heard from a number of Branford residents who utilize the service currently and look forward to having greater service. I can also tell you that I heard from a number of businesses, particularly, which I know there's a lot of support, and we're fortunate in the town of Branford that we have a pretty strong bioscience, biotech cluster here in Branford. Well, let me tell you, when I went and visited with a number of those businesses, those biotech that everyone says we want to attract here and do what we have to do to have a viable hub here in Branford, well, a number of them have said we need to improve our transportation to this region. And part of that is Tweed. That's what is said many times. It's not only recruiting talent to come here, but it's also bringing in potential customers, prospective investors, and also board members. Some of these companies get significant investments in dollars, and they want to put together a board of directors. The board of directors don't necessarily, but that's who they need to attract, and that's what I hear. So from that aspect, from that point, yes, I've heard from that this would be a positive. But again, I'm not diminishing the other concerns. I hear those too, as somebody that represents everybody. But I just think, to be clear, for the people who are watching tonight and for other, there is a process, and, that the authority, the applicant needs to follow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Can I have the, I have a question, Amy. What I heard you say, and I want to make sure I heard you say it right, is that the FAA is going to decide. Is that what you said?
My understanding of the process is that the environmental assessment, which was being conducted, is then submitted in draft form. And my understanding is that the FAA receives that. They rely on, they may engage other federal agencies to review that environmental assessment. They have a public comment period, which they allow public comment, and other agencies or organizations come, and then they make I believe it is the FAA that makes the determination to then move to an EIS.
Oh, you're just talking about the decision to move to the EIS?
Correct.
Because otherwise, what is the authority for? Do they not vote up or down on whether the expansion will go forward?
My understanding, and I will say this is my understanding of it, is that the authority entered into a long-term contract with the private entity Avports. And so they are the applicant. So the authority essentially approved a long-term agreement, and where they would then become the applicant, and the private entity is moving it through.
So they have the lease, but the expansion still has to be approved. Is that correct?
If I could just offer a clarification, I believe the master plan that includes the expansion of the runways and the change of the terminal to the other side of East Haven is part of an airport master plan that has been adopted by the Tweed New Haven Airport Authority.
And they entered into an agreement with Asports to now move that through. So it's not, it would be private dollars, it's a large part that are funding this.
I think that the second thing, the last thing I want to say is that I think what I hear in our request, you say you trust the process. I think there's a lot of people in this room who don't trust the process. And I think that's the point. I think you've heard it a few times that comment is cut off or not, there's no response. The comment period is going to be too short for regular people to really respond in an educated way. Am I getting that right?
Well, can I clear, because I'll let you finish your comment, but I just want to, I think it's important to clarify as we're going. I believe where the frustration, at least from what I've heard from speaking to residents, and I believe how I heard it today, the frustration was that public comment was at the end of the authority meetings, and that's where they felt that they weren't being heard. The authority is not the agency that will be acting or making the decision on the EIS. It's the Federal Airport Authority. I believe that was how I understood, because there was...
well, wouldn't they be, as the applicant, wouldn't they be communicating with that authority? I mean, there's got to be a way for the data, for the public input to get to the right people. And one would hope that that would be the process. I don't want to go too much into this.
I think we just have to define, there's the New Haven Airport Authority, and then there's the federal FAA.
Yeah.
And where it is now, the applicant is applying to the FAA, not to the New Haven Authority.
Right, so the FAA would...
Is the one who would then...
But it's still the request for consideration of full non-model data stands. I believe that that is true no matter, because I believe that our understanding is that they can make the decision to go to the next step based on model data and not actual data. And I think that's the critical point here, is that how do we get that message? Is there a person or an entity in town that can get that message through? And that's my concern, that real data is used. I don't know if we have a voice at the table or we'll get it, or there's some funnel through COG or whatever else, but I think that is the intent here, is to let's get real data considered, and can anybody in our town help to get that message through? And thank you, I'll stop now.
Anyone else now from the RTM that hasn't spoken? We're going back to Representative Langer.
Jamie, you don't need to come back, but through you, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to just make one point. I think that once an expansion happens, then we're kind of sunk by that. We don't really understand the full environmental impact. If our community and the residents of our community don't understand that. Because once that expansion happens, if we don't understand that, we don't really know what that result is going to potentially be. And I think that's where a huge amount of concern is, especially for the citizens of Branford, as well as those of us who are closest.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a question about the amended Tweed resolution and the second bullet. So since there is a Branford resident, is that second bullet still, I guess somebody over there is going to answer?
Representative Brooks.
Point of information.
Thank you.
All it says is that we should be able to directly participate in decisions that impact Branford in the 2000. So we just seek a voice. If we have one, great, done. So we don't have to.
So we have one already.
Again, this is a letter of support. It's not saying anything. We're just supporting these measures. If they're happening, great. If not, then we support them happening. That's all this is.
Point of information. We're discussing a letter that we haven't even voted to replace the one that's on the agenda yet. We're way off track, people.
Any further comments from members of the RTM? It's an amendment.
But we haven't voted on it. Why are we discussing it?
All right, any other comments from members of the RTM?
Representative Henschel asked me to read for him what he has.
Representative Henschel?
Representative Henschel, second district. Well, let me read what Representative Henschel has first. Representative second. Full-blown environmental impact study is not a foregone conclusion. It is an option that the federal government can choose to pursue. This resolution is stating that the town feels that full-blown studies should be completed before the final expansion is approved. Representative Henschel. Not Representative.
Who else is on there?
Stepanek.
Representative Stepanek?
My hearing the connection is good, so tell me if you don't hear me very well, because I'm in Singapore right now, and so you probably think before I have to be a big user of media work, but actually I'm not.
He took a vote.
Ray, put your microphone.
Yeah, put your mic, please.
So that's so much travel that my guess would be I'm going to say that my guess would be that in the next 20 years, there's no way to
We're discussing what it's supposed to be.
That's because all the idiots that are being
Jeff,
Go ahead. Now, that's it's very interesting what you do, by the way, particularly this RTM meeting. But I think the technical side of it has been ignored, and I think we should address that as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to point out, Representative Stepanek, it's very difficult to pick up the microphone. The old microphone can pick up much better.
I have no idea.
And you know that.
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this item before we go?
There's this.
You already had, you spoken once already. You already had your time.
Oh, I thought we said okay.
Oh, thank
I just wanted to clarify some misconceptions, that's all.
What do you want to clarify?
No,
I want
wait.
to clarify some misconceptions.
No.
Just to clarify that the environmental assessment, the FAA will then declare a finding of no significance, which would mean everything goes through. On the EA, I've studied many EA documents in the past, they'll be looking at alternatives. So it's like they'll have their first alternative or second alternative. And it gives the public time to ask some very serious questions which they have to answer. So if we want to ask questions like air monitoring and water monitoring, and another thing, one thing that wasn't mentioned by this woman over here, who brought some good points up, is all this asphalt and impervious surface is going to create a heat island effect. We have been attending the meetings in New Haven for the zoning of wetlands and parking areas. 1,500 parking places will be down there. So we've been there, and we've been having a clear say in it. So just to let you know that we're doing a lot on the sidelines that are involved, trying to make a difference, yes, we do. We do have a say. By asking critical questions in the comment period, you can ask critical questions too. This is not just the FAA stamp or not. The authority has nothing to do with saying what to do, neither does the management company afterwards. The FAA and the community are come together. That's federal law. The Council of Environmental Quality, CEQ, is meant to say that we, the community, should have a say and be involved in the process of anything that's large and that will change our quality of life and the environment. So I'm only asking all of you. This is not about against the airport. This is like give us all time so we can study the data, and by you endorsing that and saying this is important, and then we can also ask our representatives to go to the state to ask to be put on the authority. The state can say Branford wants to be on the authority. They can do that. That might be our next step here. So these are things that are possible. So if they're saying that we have no say, I beg to disagree, we do. That's the whole purpose here. So please, consider all of that and give us a chance to really make sure we have air monitoring stations, noise monitoring stations.
All right, anybody else wishing from the RTM wishing to speak on this? Representative Sires?
Yes, through you, Mr. Moderator. I've heard.
Microphone. not for the PD.
Thank you. So I've heard a lot in the group saying that they're not against the airport itself, and quite a lot. So my question is to anyone who would answer, what will you tolerate then? What have you countered, offered? If you're going in saying, I know you don't like, I'm hearing, and I think it's very premature because we haven't had the studies yet. I like to make a decision on both sides. Until the first selectman came in, I hadn't heard any positive, and I can't believe a project this big is just so much negative. There's got to be some, and thank you, First Selectman, for bringing up that you've asked some businesses and they thought it was positive to have it. I would like to hear both sides. I don't believe anybody should be making a decision on only the negatives. We have to have some positive. So what did you offer? What are you in support of?
Ma'am, we're not getting to dialogue on this.
That's just an open question that I just like to hear, maybe a future meeting, what are you in support of, or some positive?
Representative
to make
Sayers, I
it.
think we
Thank
need
you.
to stick to the amendment here.
Yes.
This is the issue in front of us.
Trying to follow it.
Well, now we're sticking to the amendment.
I guess.
Very brief response to that, Mr. Moderator. It's just interesting to me because obviously I'm on the other side of the aisle here. I grew up only knowing positives about Tweed. I grew up back when Tweed used to fly turboprops out to JFK and Cleveland. I think you could get to Chicago through Cleveland or Cincinnati. And it was actually a pretty vibrant airport and an option. And I flew there numerous times. And it wasn't until very recently that I came to see some of the negatives of it. So I think part of it is that we're just operating in different informational paradigms here. It's, as I said earlier, disappointing to me that it feels like there's a partisan element to this, and there really shouldn't be. The way this amendment was designed was to be something that empowered Branford as a community, as a voting entity.
Exactly, it doesn't.
And that's what the intent was, and I can tell you because I helped draft it. And that's all we want out of this. I urge you to vote for it. I understand if you don't. Personally, I hope you do.
All right.
Mr. Moderator?
I have one
Representative Anderson?
She has a question.
To Representative Bonner. How does this empower Branford? How does this resolution empower Branford? That's the disconnect I'm having. The environment, I'm all for the environment, I'm all for that. I just don't understand what the resolution does for anybody.
It's because the answer is no.
So my response to that, through you, Mr. Moderator, would be that most of the discussions that I've seen have happened either in the context of a private company or private companies, which aren't directly accountable to anybody except for investors and board members, or for the most part, the city of New Haven, and to a certain extent, the city of East Haven, which is reasonable because that's where Tweed is. And I think the general, perception of things, certainly my perception, is that Branford gets sidelined from those discussions, although residents have had a great hand in the expansion of Tweed, either in their capacity as state politicians or residents such as David White. And so, what does this document mean? I think any document that comes out of an RTM, that comes out of a town, is significant to leaders in Branford. I do believe that this is a consequential thing. And, is it something that somebody then has to go out and do something? We vote on this. It's not like people are going to start marching down the street, okay, tear down Tweed, okay, build Tweed. Obviously, it's nothing like that. But I think that there are symbolic and representative things that we can do as this, town meeting. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think making those is empowering. And I do believe also that leaders at the state level will see that. Democrats will see that. Republicans will see that and say, that's interesting. Branford, this is interesting and important to Branford. We're going to take that into consideration. I don't think it'll be nothing. Even if it is just a symbolic amendment, which again, I encourage you to vote for. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
May we take a 10-minute recess? 10-minute recess.
10-minute recess?
Motion for a 10-minute recess.
Motion on the floor for a 10-minute recess. Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. We're in recess for 10 minutes. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Representative Brooks, let's go. Representative Brooks, I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. Make sure you get the right one.
Get two.
Representative Sullivan, let's go. Ray, let's go. Representative Leach, let's. Donna, let's go. Meeting back to order.
Donna.
Let's go. I got it. Thank you. All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Will everybody please be seated? Representative Healy, call this meeting back to order again. All right, any further discussions from the RTM before we vote on this? Amendment, on the amendment?
Oh my God, this is going to be a shit show.
Gentlemen, we're back.
I told him this is back in 10 minutes.
So, we'll do a roll call on this. A yes vote is in favor of the amendment, a no vote you are against.
Okay, so this is for the amendment. Representative Alphone.
No.
Representative Amore.
Yes.
Representative Anderson.
No.
Representative Bonenberger.
Yes.
Representative Brooks.
Yes.
Representative Conklin.
No.
Representative Everson.
Yes.
Representative Erlanger.
Yes.
Representative Greenberg. She's on. No. Representative Healy.
No.
Representative Henschel.
Yes.
Representative Hines.
No.
Representative Ingraham.
No.
Kelly's absent. Representative Leach, yes. Representative Maresca.
No.
Absent, absent, absent. Representative Sires.
No.
Representative Stepanik.
No.
Representative Sullivan.
Yes.
Representative Toohill.
No.
Representative Verderam.
No.
It's not her, it's her.
Representative Witkowski. Oh, sorry, he's absent. Representative Wells.
No.
Yeah, it fails.
It fails? I mean,
Numbers are 8 to 13.
okay, the amendment fails, 13 yes, no, 13 no, 8 yes.
No,
The
no.
amendment failed.
8,
8 yes.
yeah.
Now we're back to the main motion by Representative Brooks, which was the proposed resolution that Sandra Reiner sent to us. We need to vote on that. Any discussion on that?
I have a lot to say about it.
No? Hearing none, all those in favor of the initial resolution by Sandra Reiner signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion is defeated. Abstain?
Who abstained?
Who was abstained?
Henschel?
Who?
Henschel.
Henschel abstained, okay. All right, moving on to item number 7, any other business to come before the RTM? Hearing none, we're moving on to item 8, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Representative Maury, okay, is there a second? Second of Wells, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah. No.
We are adjourned.
Hey, guys, on the phone.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.